Hey, what's going on, everybody? My name is Couri, LCDC III student nurse. Just want to say thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of our channel. So today we're going to be talking about methamphetamine. This is a really big problem for our treatment facility and really all treatment facilities in general. This is something that we don't have any good therapeutic ways to treat this. Counseling, I've had situations where I've gone into the clinical rotation and I've seen someone who's been on methamphetamine, and when I come in and say, hey, I'm a counselor, let's talk, they look at me like I'm from the government, like I'm out to get them. They've got this paranoid mindset that is indistinguishable from schizophrenia. So that level of psychosis is very, very hard to deal with, and we do not have any medications to help with this either. So it's a compounding problem, and just to start off, I've got this chart here showing that these stimulants, they're on the rise, specifically stimulant-related deaths. The amount of people dying from methamphetamine and just overdoses on this is absolutely out of this world. In 2017, 10,000 reported deaths. 2018, 19, and 2020 haven't come out with figures yet, but this rise is going up and up and up at a very quick rate. So, as I've talked about in other videos, if you guys haven't watched them, please go ahead, run over there and watch them. But it's very interesting to see these synthetics, they're getting stronger. So your natural synthetics, like methamphetamine, they have gotten so strong. The way we're cooking them, we're finding new gases, new chemicals to add in that make them so powerful. Our brains, our bodies, they just can't even handle it. So very interesting to see that this is a problem that we're dealing with as we're trying to contain the opioid crisis, which still continues to grow. We're also got this problem with methamphetamine that is out of this world, and everybody's kind of not giving it the attention it needs. So first I want to share this. This is one of the first cases of bath salts that ever came out, actually. This young man on the left and right, that is him. But as you can see on the right, he's he almost looks like a zombie or a demon. So this drug, it keeps you up so long that, our brains are it's very important that we get sleep every night. When we don't, our brains get dry. We don't get that natural fluid-like concentration that we need, and when that happens, it dries out and permanent brain damage happens. Now, when this is prolonged, we get these psychosis benders that we cannot even explain. It's so interesting to see a lot of this stuff emerging around these drugs. We're learning it as we're finding it because we still don't understand. Even in 2020, these drugs we're creating and finding and people are making and putting out there, the effects that they have are short-term, very, very dangerous. Long-term, pretty much debilitating. So as you can see, this young man on the right, was found eating a homeless guy. He was on the influence of bath salts. And on the left, you can see he's a very normal looking guy, no problems. But under the influence of this drug, like all drugs, you can be completely warped into someone else who's cheating, stealing, lying, or possibly eating a homeless man. So as you can see, flocka and bath salts are a big topic around these stimulants, and we'll be going more into depth into other videos on those. But we're going to now jump to, why this happens. Why does this create and turn someone into such a different character than what they actually are? So if you take a look at the brain structures, very cool how we can study this. Someone who is a normal control is on the far right. So you've got a lot of brain activity, you've got a lot of great looking dopamine activity. But as we go to the left, you can see the longer that drug is abused, the more drug that is taken in by stimulants specifically. You create this problem where the dopamine completely revolves around that drug. So instead of getting your dopamine hit from, going out, saying hello to people, for eating food, having sex, it becomes focused entirely around this drug. So methamphetamine is the king of drug abuse and dependence. I've dealt with a lot of clients and other counselors that I work with where people will go 15, 20 years without using methamphetamine, and then you start talking about it and it's like, boom. You can almost feel it in them. They come alive. They call it euphoric recall, where you just get that good feeling from just talking about it. It primes your brain saying, dang man, I'm feeling good, and it makes you more likely to go find that drug and use it. So very, very interesting that drug is the one surfacing. We deal with a lot of patients who they come in and they're finding that the meth is cut with fentanyl. So they don't even know they're using meth, but fentanyl is so likely to cause that death. They cut the meth in, so you get that high-low, so they kind of balance each other out. But when you do that, you create that huge problem on your heart. Now, that huge problem on your heart is something that we do not know how to even deal with. We do work with some hospitals. The amount of vegetative endocarditis, which is bacteria that plays place in your heart, and they have to do surgery to pretty much get rid of that. That is growing to a point where hospitals can't even keep up with it. So what we are finding, just full circle back to the stimulants of the brain, is that when you use chronic amounts of methamphetamine over time, when you stop, you are unable to experience pleasure. Anything you do, I don't care what it is, it's very hard to find pleasure in it, because the amount of dopamine release, if we take a look on the chart right here, methamphetamine is the king at getting dopamine release. I mean, you release norepinephrine, serotonin, and dopamine when you use methamphetamine. And the dopamine amounts, if you take a look at this chart, it shows cocaine, nicotine, alcohol, food, very low amounts of dopamine in comparison to methamphetamine. Methamphetamine is such a spike upward that, I hate to say this, but human beings were not, we were not made to experience that kind of pleasure. No matter what we do, if you use methamphetamine and you got the genes that will allow you to love that drug, you are not going to be able to almost come back to gravity. So that's why it's so hard for so many people to get away from it. And as you can tell with my next presentation, we've got this case here. In just 10 years, this girl using it, it aged her like you would not believe. Now, as we took a look on that brain study, it's very interesting how when you chronically use these stimulants, specifically methamphetamine, you get that drying out of the brain, and that causes permanent brain damage. A great example of this, and something to look out for, is when you have these cyclical twitches, they call them. And that's when you no matter what you're doing, you've got these cyclical twitches. They come up when you're trying to concentrate, when you're just going about your day. And that's honestly a sign of sometimes permanent brain damage, because that causes the brain to dry out, and then you've got these holes in the brain, and it causes pretty much unregulated electrical activity. So very interesting. We're going to go more into depth on that. But once again, this case study here, this girl in just 10 years, she died from methamphetamine use. This drug is something that does not have a long life if you're going to keep up with it through your lifetime. This drug is getting so powerful now that we're seeing clients who use it 1, 2, 3 times, have a heart attack, and that completely redoes the whole way the body works with the drug. When the drug is introduced, you're almost guaranteed to have a heart attack, because the heart is just unable to keep up with the ever-evolving strength of these drugs. So as you can see, also, very pretty picture of the mouth here. This drug, it eats away the mucous membranes of the mouth very, very quickly. When that happens, it's called meth mouth, and other bacterial residing things can live in your mouth. So this girl actually had, a case where maggots were living in her mouth at a point, because of how damaging this drug is and what it does to keep our natural barriers from bacteria, from viruses, from all the things that keep us removed safe. So, why this happens, you guys, a lot around the receptors, the things that are releasing the amount of dopamine. If we take that comparison, like that other chart, we took a look at methamphetamine on average releases 1,250 units of dopamine. That's hard to measure, but luckily we've got the technology today to look at averages. Cocaine releases about 350, sex around 250, and nicotine at 100. Now that's very, very crazy to think that something as sex, which has a biological purpose where we have sex so we can procreate, we can pass our genes on, that's built into us. Methamphetamine has almost 10 times the reward of that. And because of that, we often find that methamphetamine, people who are addicted to methamphetamine, they have problems getting back in the real world. They will undo their life, their biological clock, their biological wants and desires and programming for this drug. Now, when you're dealing with something like that, there's nothing that we can really do. Any medication, any counseling, and the amount of psychoses that the drug causes, it's very, very hard to deal with. Now, in the next coming 5, 10, 20 years, I'm very fearful that this will get out of hand to the point where we have no way to stop it. Now, these drugs, like I said, as they remain illegal, they're finding their ways into other drugs. Meth is with fentanyl, fentanyl is with meth, and marijuana even. We've been seeing cases of cocaine, marijuana, methamphetamine, and fentanyl being cut into marijuana, and it's very, very frightening for our future generations. So, once again, I invite your insight, your thoughts. I don't see this getting better in any near future unless we come up with some miracle medication, because counseling is one of the most effective ways to address drug addiction. And unless you have a very highly motivated person who's once it themselves, methamphetamine's clutches are unlike any clutch I've seen from a drug. So I want your guys' thoughts. I want your guys' opinions and ideas on how we can conquer this. Maybe if you work at a recovery center or even have beaten the addiction yourself, please offer that. We want to know so we can take it, expand it, magnify it, so we can bring it to other people. So thank you guys, and until next time.